4! Yeah! What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Artist's Journey. Right now we're in Seoul, South Korea. It's 1 p.m. and it's Saturday. It's nice outside. Oh, I should turn closest thing since we're using the aircon. So, yes, my name is Wilfred Lee. I'm the host, and today we are here with a really awesome, cool, special guest with a brand new look. It's none other than Wesley Chang. How are you, sir?
Hello.
Hello.
Doing great.
Internet. Wesley, Internet. We're just here hanging out. Hello, Mr. Internet. Good to see you. So, yeah, we're just here. We're just hanging out, and we're gonna just try out Facebook Live. This is actually gonna be the first time that we tried it out for the Artist Journey podcast. As always, we always record it, and then later it's gonna be uploaded to YouTube. But I think this is gonna be a really cool opportunity for people just to kind of, just sit down and like kind of watch casually through Facebook, and then hopefully we can get some questions and stuff like that. So if you have any questions, feel free to just jump in, and I'll be happy to answer it. So, with that said, recently I've been checking out your stuff. First of all, if you haven't checked out Wesley's Instagram page, it is awesome. You have probably one of my favorite Instagram pages here, profiles, because you have so many great photos every single time. And, I think we met through film, doing like shorts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Pretty much, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I can't remember what film it was at this point.
I think we did a few. We did like a handful, like Kimura and some other ones. But what I like about your photos is that obviously like super cinematic, right? And you can definitely feel this type of resonating story in each one of them and stuff. And you have a whole bunch that you took while you were away on vacation or traveling, I guess, right? So we're gonna get through a lot of stuff, but I would really like to just kind of go through these photos, starting from your travels, and like where did you go first of all?
So in February, I went to Myanmar with a friend.
Where's Myanmar?
Myanmar, just above Thailand and Laos, like Southeast Asia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was for a project, actually. It was my first time doing something like this. Of course, I have photos on Instagram, but I actually went there mainly to shoot video.
Right.
A friend of mine had been there last year, and he took this tour where they take you to these tribes and started photographing these people. The ladies of these tribes have tattoos all over their faces, but it's a dying culture. The culture is illegal now, and it's been many years since the last ladies got any tattoos. A lot of them are like 60, 70. Like there was one lady we met who was over 100. So he wanted to make a book project out of this, and fund it on Kickstarter. And so I went along to shoot video and shoot a behind the scenes and shoot promotional video, all that, and just be out there as well, because it was an awesome opportunity to be out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the project grew over time. First it was just going to be portraits, and then there was so much more there. And it also has become a bit of a charity, because instead of making money off of this book, the point is, after funding it on Kickstarter, sending the prints out to Myanmar so that tourists can buy it there, and that money can be a source of income for some of these villages, because they're very remote.
Yeah.
There's about 6 of them that you can access as a tourist. Everything else you're not allowed to go to as a tourist. We got special permission.
Whoa.
And
any reason behind that? Like
there's a bit of conflict in the area right now.
Okay, like political, like civil conflict, something like that.
All kinds of conflict, but
is it dangerous when you were there?
It's not. I mean, things have happened, so they keep it closed. However, with us, every time we were in any of the areas that tourists are not allowed in, there was either police or military with us or around. And
Really?
They would check up, and they would report and make sure everything's fine.
Yeah.
Because it'd be the last thing they want is something bad to happen to us.
And
And
bad on them. Right?
everybody was really nice and friendly. There was like absolutely no hostility at all. But since these villages are so remote, they don't get a lot of attention from the government, so it's difficult for them to get schools and teachers and clean water. And there were times that even we couldn't get clean water. We couldn't buy bottled water out there.
So how did you cope with that? Like, what did you guys do?
Well, we brought bottled water, but if we ever ran out, sometimes we just kind of had to like not drink water or drink other things. They drink a lot of green tea out there, so it's boiled. But we did get sick a couple times, and it was pretty intense.
Pretty brutal.
Yeah, but
it's like the worst thing ever. Like getting like stomach like poison.
There's a couple of hard days. Like I have all the shooting days separated in folders, and there's just like a couple days you're just empty because I was out.
Really? Yeah. Like how out were you? You just could not move at all?
The worst time was like it started out alright. By the end of the day, I was just laying down and vomiting every 5 minutes. But I was fine the next day. In the end.
So after that, you're like, oh. Like, well, I feel much more better, and you just kind of moved on the next day.
I lost
it was like a passing thing.
I lost a lot of weight.
Yeah, I would imagine.
I mean,
you gotta be super careful because like throwing up or even like having diarrhea is like people die from that, because of dehydration.
Yeah,
that's
but
like
we were
huge
prepared.
thing.
We knew that something like this was gonna happen.
Yeah.
The concept of hygiene is almost non-existent out there. So really, getting sick sucked, but it wasn't the hard part. Yeah, like. It finished. We're over it. All right, let's like keep working. Let's keep shooting.
Sure.
It wasn't so bad.
So this is a cool picture over here. Actually, this is the Chin Village girl in her school uniform.
Yeah, it's the national school uniform.
And what's really interesting about these travel photos is obviously you have landscape, you have situational photos, and you have actually portraits of people that you meet along the way. So how does that usually happen? Because I always hear a lot of different scenarios and how you usually approach or kind of make a kind of rapport before you take a photo of someone.
Yeah.
Like what was your experience like in terms of meeting the locals and kind of just getting their photos like this?
In this case,
because she looks really open, she doesn't.
Because you see the photo where she finally opens up. Right? You don't see the 10 photos before it where she, isn't comfortable yet. But being out there is a bit different than other locations because they don't really see tourists out there except for those 6 villages I told you about. So there's that, and then there's also the fact that they don't speak English. At all. We had a translator with us, but for anything like this that was just separate from the project, like I saw her, I wanted to take a picture, there was no translation going on. It's just walking up, pointing at your camera, smiling at them, making sure they're okay with it, and then trying to take a few shots. A lot of them don't work out. I have a few where it's kind of disappointing because there was like an amazing looking person, but they had an amazing expression, but once you put the camera up, they don't know they have that expression, right? So they lose it, or they think they have to look different, and then you can't bring it out, and it's a shame. But it's hit and miss, so you shoot a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting part of that, especially when you're doing these type of I'm not sure what type of to describe this genre of photography, maybe travel or something, but it always seems to kind of capture something that's in the moment, right? That people are not noticing, but at that because, like you said before, they have that really distinct characterization or that kind of amazing face, and then once people are aware that they're being observed, everything always changes. I think that's pretty interesting, though.
Yeah. And I mean, around there, they also are not used to being photographed. In some tourist villages. Like the main village that gets the most tourism, the ladies there with the tattoos, they know what to do. They're used to it, basically. It's kind of their job at this point. But with other people, like they have no idea what's going on. But what works a lot, so what worked really well with that other girl was that I took a few photos, and she was a little afraid at first and a little uncomfortable, and then I showed her the photos. She saw what was happening, and then she smiled, and then it was great. And then after that, she warmed up to us and everything. So it doesn't work with everybody.
No, really.
No,
Some people are just like, what the fuck is this?
Well, some people are just too shy, and they just they don't change their expression. Like, all right, now leave me alone.
Let me just go back to working.
Yeah,
that's awesome. So, talking about this project that you were working on, and it's kind of like mentioning about the women and their kind of not lost tradition, but kind of dying tradition of tattooing and stuff like that. How did you get involved with that, and was it something, what was this process like to get from, pre-production, building up the concept, to going there and then afterwards?
Right. So like I said, it was originally my friend's project. He had gone there, and then I met up with him once, and he told me about it. And I was like, can I do video? Because I know he doesn't do video. I really wanted to be out there. And at that point, I knew nothing other than, there would be these ladies with cool tattoos. There's very little information about them on the internet, so to prepare, we kind of just had to prepare for everything.
Yeah.
And there was very little we could actually research about. And it was a matter of getting out there and actually speaking to them and getting as much we can out of them, but we also had to speak to a lot of people because they don't have a written history.
Whoa.
So
it's all passed down verbally?
Yeah, so you get huge variations in stories, and the story of the history of the tattoo was a lot of legend. So, I mean, for them, they consider it true.
Can you like elaborate a little bit on that? What that legend would be, or like?
It revolved around mainly the women basically not being able to marry outside of their tribe. It was the different tribes that will have different tattoos.
Sure.
And the other people don't have that culture are obviously not going to find it attractive because they're just completely covered in it. But they had some legends involving kings and spirits and stuff like that, and it got really convoluted at times. So we basically packed as much gear as we could carry, as many batteries as we could carry, because there was no electricity out there.
Yeah. And
just met as many people as we could and interviewed them. There was actually way more people out there than we thought there would be originally. We were under the impression that there would be about 40 or 50 of these ladies left. We found nearly 100, and there's supposed to be a lot more up north. However, we're definitely not allowed to be in there. So, yeah, it was just prepare for everything and then document what happens.
Cool. So, did you get a chance to see the tattooing process?
No.
For any of them?
So the tattooing process was outlawed in 1975 or 6.
Oh wow. Okay.
The government basically wanted to unite the people by eliminating all culture. Yeah, military government. So that became illegal, and some of it was still done in secret, but at this point there's no tattoo artist left or that anybody knows of. However, we met the daughter of one of the tattoo artists.
Right.
And she was the youngest person we met. She was 40, somewhere in her late 40s. I don't remember her
really
age anymore. So she was much younger than everyone else. And
that's kind of interesting how she's considered the youngest though out of everybody. It's been that kind of restrained and restricted for that entire time.
Yeah, she believes she could be the youngest one left. We'd have to go to every single corner to actually know, but by far the youngest. And she actually wants to tattoo her daughter, which would have to be in secret. But don't know if she'll do it or not. However, we asked them about how they feel about this culture no longer being around, and they were really split in how they felt about it. Half of them felt that it's a shame that their culture is dying and that the young people don't do it anymore. But the other half are like, I mean, this culture doesn't really make sense in the modern world anymore. Young people are becoming more modernized. They still live very isolated, but they still come to town every once in a while. Even though they don't even have phone signal, a lot of people have smartphones there now.
Yeah, that's a really common thing I actually read, because when I'm doing marketing, it's like a lot of people don't necessarily have electricity or like running water, but like 80 to 90 people will have like mobile phones.
Yeah.
Which is really kind of weird.
Yeah. Right? And they go into town, they go to these shops, and these shops will download videos and apps and stuff like that for them, and then they go back to their villages.
That's actually the same process they do in North Korea as well.
Oh, wow.
Like they have their own type of phone that Kim Jong, they made, and then they have these shops. It's kind of like a video game place where, everyone goes in there and they can order what apps to download, and they'll systematically do it for them.
Oh, wow.
It's kind of interesting how these type of second or third world countries kind of make these different type of environments or like things as a result of not getting enough access and stuff, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, and some of the people we met, they have smartphones, and they've seen, there's a lot of K-pop, they like K-pop, but when we were there, they were, for a lot of people, the first foreigners that actually met in person. So they've seen people from different countries, obviously, but they've never actually met them in person. But they are influenced by other countries' culture and some Western culture as well. So they don't want to have tattoos because it doesn't fit into that view of the world that they are getting now versus what their grandparents had. So a lot of the ladies are like, it's probably for the best that this culture is ending, as well as it being an extremely painful process.
Yeah.
It's not like, with a sterilized machine or anything. It's like literally a sewing needle tied to a stick, and they just like poke their face for sometimes up to like 2 days.
2 days
to make the tattoo.
Oh Jesus!
And then they spit their face is swollen for like a week, and they can't eat, and I mean, we met the ones who survived. I can't imagine how many might have died from infection and stuff like that.
What? Hold up. For this, you met the ones who had survived.
Yeah. Like, we don't know how many actually died from infection, right? Because yeah, and you can see how much detail there is, and they have it on their eyes and everything.
Oh my gosh! Like, I can't even imagine like just around the eyelids, and especially around the middle part.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
And they made the ink out of like soot and beetle nut and ox gallbladder. But when they couldn't get these things, because it was difficult, especially when the military was around and stopping it, they sometimes use pen ink, which is poisonous.
Yeah.
So
that's kind of interesting, though. Like, I mean, besides from it being like a dying tradition, like there was no type of proper education in terms of like learning how to do it. Considering that like newer generations, they have smartphones, but they're just primarily focused on Western, Eastern culture outside of their own, but nothing really focusing on kind of improving this particular type of tradition of face tattoos. And just looking at this right now, like her tattoo compared to the other one that we just saw, any particular reason that there's like slightly different designs? Is it like a tribal thing, or
it's all the same general design.
Okay, yeah.
The line thickness varies, the intensity varies. It depends on how well it was done. But they didn't seem to have any meaning for those kind of variations. However, other tribes will have completely different tattoos, like entirely different. But yeah, I guess just different villages or different tattoo artists just did it slightly differently.
Obviously, like, just for me to listen to this is like quite the culture shock. I can imagine going there. What other types of culture shocks did you have when you went to those places?
I don't know. I didn't think of it as culture shock. I mean, if you go to another country and you go to a city, then you expect a certain amount of things to be similar to what you're used to.
Mm-hmm.
And so anything that's not becomes culture shock. But being out there, you kind of just expect everything to be different, I suppose.
Yeah. Okay.
So it never actually felt like culture shock.
Like anything specified. It was just this one huge.
It's just entirely different. Their world is entirely different from our world.
Right.
In almost every way, except for the fact that they know that they need to eat, sleep, and shelter. Right.
How would you describe like the natural disposition of the people there? Like, what are their, their overall attitude? Like, some people can be very hostile, some people can be very open or very, introverted, and
they were very kind. Yeah. There were a lot of shy people and people who wanted to share more or less than others, but there wasn't the slightest bit of hostility ever. Very friendly, very generous. But there were some villages that we went to where they weren't hostile, but they were very apprehensive about our presence. Only one village I can think of that was a very small village where they didn't want to take part in the project. Usually we'd go there and the translator would explain what we're doing. We weren't just tourists who wanted to take photos. We explained that, this is a project to document their culture and also like the benefits it'll have for them, and then they usually become very friendly and want to be part of it. There was this one village where like they didn't want to participate at all, so we left. But that's fine. It felt like maybe something must have happened in the past for them to be like that.
Sure.
It like wasn't anything personal. It's just they probably had their reasons.
Yeah, understandable.
Yeah. But out there we slept in people's houses, and they opened up their homes to us, and they shared their food with us and their alcohol.
How was that like in terms of the cuisine, like food and alcohol and stuff?
The food is really, really good. I used to think that I didn't like cabbage. But the way they cook cabbage and the way they cook pumpkin
Korea.
So good. All the vegetables just had so much flavor. Yeah. Cabbage. I really liked the cabbage. I was really surprised about that. At first, I was eating the meat. Then after the first time I got sick, it's like, I guess I'll stick to vegetarian.
Yeah, I guess so. You can't go wrong with vegetarian really, in any country like that.
They have no refrigeration or anything.
But meat is like cow and goat or pork,
beef, chicken.
Okay, so that's kind of standard.
Yeah, there were some goats, but I don't think we ever had goat. I saw goats in the villages. Yeah, nothing bizarre. I know they have buffaloes, but we didn't eat any buffaloes.
Okay,
those are kind of expensive. So
pretty gamey, I would assume.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's kind of just move back a little bit, just like kind of more back into your early history and stuff. So, what was the reason why you came to Korea? What were you doing here for?
I originally came as a student, because I had a lot of Korean friends in high school. So after graduating high school, my best friends came here, and I wanted to come here as well.
In high school, where would that be?
Guatemala.
Guatemala.
Yeah.
A lot of Koreans in Guatemala?
A lot of Koreans in Guatemala.
Wow, really?
So I connected with them because I'm mixed Chinese American, grew up in Guatemala. So it was the whole Asian Western culture mix that was the reason we got along so well.
Yeah.
Even though I didn't really know much about their culture, first didn't know about their food, didn't understand their language. It was just that Asian Western mix that worked out really well. So my closest friends were almost all Korean. So I was pretty lucky because a lot of people who go abroad don't get to be with their friends, but I came here and got to be with my best friends, and they helped me out a lot. So I didn't suffer as much as other people who came here.
For sure. I think that sounds great. So, half Chinese and American, right? Living in Guatemala, how did that happen?
My dad's Chinese, but born and raised in Guatemala.
Oh, okay,
yeah,
cool.
Chinese people are everywhere at this point. Yeah. So, my dad doesn't even speak any dialect of Chinese.
Only period like Spanish?
English too, yeah.
English too?
Yeah.
Okay.
because he went to the States for college, so he learned English really well. Yeah. So when I was born in the States, but when my older brother and I were about the age to go to school, my parents decided they wanted us to go to school in Guatemala, which at first seemed like a weird decision, but I actually think it was a great decision.
Yeah.
Growing up in a third world country just kind of grounds you a bit more. Yeah. And, don't have school shootings.
Oh, savage! Savage move. So I'm just kind of curious. Like, I don't really know a lot about just Guatemala in general, right? So like, what was early childhood like? Like favorite memories about going there, hanging out. What's like the usual thing? For example, I'll give some introspective. Like, living up in Toronto, Canada. Great for multiculturalism. When I older I get, I start to realize, wow, that's really happy that I grew up there as a kid, because neighbors were Ethiopian, Portuguese, Maltese. Like, I would never know what these countries were if it weren't for my neighborhood. And we would just play handball, or we just ride bikes and shit like that. And I'm just kind of curious, what was childhood like for you in Guatemala, especially because you had this really unique mixed Asian group that you guys kind of made.
Well, that mixed Asian thing wasn't until high school.
Okay.
Before that, I guess growing up in Guatemala was almost like growing up a decade behind first world countries.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Just things that people had in first world countries would come in much later for us. So
like maybe right now they're just like, have you seen this keyboard cat meme? They're like, oh, that's like 20 years ago.
Not exactly with memes, but I mean, by the time I had internet regularly, I think it was in 9th grade. So, people think that people from my age don't know what it was like to look up stuff in an encyclopedia, but yeah, I know what that was like. Yeah. I still played outside and all of that, but
of course,
I think people still do that. Like, just older people like to think that they like to complain about young people.
It's just a common thing that happens, right?
Yeah.
So, what were you mostly into as a kid? Like your own personal hobbies? Besides reading from encyclopedias, picking a random letter and just going to random pages.
I did not do that at all. I still kind of hate research. I never was good at it or warmed up to it. I just always wanted to play outside. That's all I wanted to do. Play with insects and stuff like that. Kick a ball around, play Pokemon. It was a long...
That kind of makes sense, actually. If you want to go out and just find insects, you're like trying to be your own like Pokemon master.
Yeah, I love insects.
Do you really?
Awesome, yeah.
What is your favorite insect that you have?
I never thought about what my favorite insect would be.
Or common ones that you would find fascinating.
Anything that's large, really.
Large insects?
Yeah. They're always the most fascinating. Like, anything tiny is kind of boring. Like ants and fleas and flies and mosquitoes.
Sure.
You get like big beetles or tarantulas. Well, tarantulas technically aren't insects, but those are the cool things. Yeah. I didn't really have a lot of hobbies when I was really young. My parents tried to get me into things. There's a brief time I was into archery. There was a brief time I was doing ping pong. It's not that I didn't enjoy them, but I just didn't want to do anything regular like that. Wasn't until like late high school where I actually started to know what it was like to develop a passion for something. Before that, it was just doing whatever I wanted to do. That was fun.
Okay, so if let's say as of today in your current life, how would you describe or introduce yourself to other people in terms of like who you are and what you do?
Well, it's been a while since I've had to do an introduction like that. I would say that I'm a freelance photographer and videographer, but a lot of the time when I meet people, I'm not the kind of person to go out to like clubs and stuff like that. So the people I'm meeting are usually at certain kind of events. Like, did you ever go to any of the Filmmakers Workshops?
Yeah.
Stuff like that, where everybody already has something in common. So I guess less of an introduction like that is needed.
Sure, because everyone's going there for the same reason.
I haven't actually thought about that. Have you ever had to like write a bio about yourself or something, and then you're just stumped? Like, this is weird. I don't know what to say about
Mom, why should I write about myself like that?
Yeah.
Okay, so the reason why I'm asking about that is because hopefully, obviously at this stage, you're kind of going towards something that you really like. You're striving for being either photography or videography, doing, creative visual arts. So, you kind of hinted that in the high school aspect that you've finally started to find your passion. So what was the catalyst for you that kind of helped kind of drive towards that path or perspective?
Well, around 8th grade, I started to get into Photoshop.
Oh, snap.
Yeah, and I was a very, very socially awkward kid in 8th grade, so instead of playing during recess, I'd go to the computer lab and use it, but it was just something I did for fun. And later on, I wanted to work on my own images, right, instead of getting stuff off the internet, so that it could be more of my own work. So I started to take photos then with like a 4-megapixel camera.
Yeah.
And that sort of grew. I had a summer job in 10th grade, and I bought my own camera. So once I graduated high school, my parents bought me my first DSLR, which I didn't know how to use yet. I didn't know really anything about photography. I got out there and shot photos, but I didn't actually know anything. And I'd mess around with that, but it wasn't until I got to Korea that I was first in a language school, which was 4 hours a day, so I had the rest of the day free. I started to take a lot of photos. I started to take a photo every day, and I made a blog where I posted a photo every day. I don't do that anymore, but that got me I started to have pressure knowing that people were going to see this. It was mainly family and close friends, but I wanted to improve. I wanted to do new things. I spent a lot of time reading stuff on the internet, how to do things, and then that's kind of the point where it started, where I started to dedicate a lot of time to it. And of course, I wasn't very good back then, but even from the point that I started that blog to about 100 days later, it was a day-to-night difference. And by then, I was really sure that I wanted to be doing that. And I haven't ever felt like I don't want to do it.
Okay, very interesting. So, in retrospect, what advice would you give to yourself 10 years ago?
10 years ago?
Yeah.
Learn how to play an instrument?
Oh, really?
It sounds kind of unrelated, but I don't know, it's just kind of one of the few things that I really regret not doing earlier.
Any particular instrument?
There was a brief time where I was learning how to play cello. I dropped it after came to Korea, and I didn't learn long enough to get good at it. So I guess cello. Cello would be fun.
Cool.
But also knowing a bit about music, also wanting to be a filmmaker is good. It would, there's people out there, people on YouTube who can do everything, including music. I can do almost everything except music. I wish I could just do that as well. However, as far as photography goes, I wouldn't have told myself anything 10 years ago, just because at this point I'm pretty sure about what I want to do, and you're told when you grow up that you should know what you want to do, but I find that most people don't. And I've known for about 5 years now that I want to do this.
Yeah.
People when they're 18 have no idea what they want to do, and so they study something that they were kind of interested in high school or sounds interesting. So a lot of people have told me that I'm really lucky that I figured out something that I for sure want to do already. Yeah. So I think 10 years ago, it was whatever I was doing was fine.
So you're already kind of going towards that natural progression of what you wanted to do.
Yeah.
So, I need to kind of give them a hint. Just like get the cello. Just keep working on that.
If only I would have done that.
Awesome. And for both of us, you kind of met through kind of like we mentioned before earlier about doing some filming and stuff. So what have been like your overall experiences really in like film in Korea?
I always had an interest in it as a kid. Sometimes we'd play with our camcorder and make stupid little films, and that of course is completely different. When I got here, I had interest in it, but I didn't know how badly I wanted to do it until I worked on a music video, which never got finished. But the day after shooting that music video, I was like, I really regret not having to go and study filmmaking, because I went to study design. And then I got to know the community here through the 48-hour film project, film contest, or whatever it's called, film
48.
festival.
Yeah, 48-hour film.
That.
Yeah.
And it was the first time meeting people with experience, and since I knew some photography, I could work with the camera. But later I realized that photography and filmmaking are not as similar as they seem at first. It's an entirely different way of thinking. The only thing that works the same is your exposure, somewhat. But the kind of liberties you take with it are also different. When we made our first short film with Pablo, who was interviewed before, we weren't taking it that seriously yet. We had some friends who came to act, and then somebody said that they couldn't do it, but they recommended someone else, and that was Miles. You knew Miles, right?
Sure, yeah.
And Miles came in, he was very professional. We were like, oh man, we gotta get our shit together.
That's so funny.
It was, and he's a really nice guy, but if you don't know him, then he looks really intimidating.
Yeah,
and so, that scared us into being more serious, and we took it more seriously, and that film sucked, of course. First film always sucks. But after that, we just spent so much more time and really didn't overlook anything for the sake of being lazy or saving time, because that part of it's not fun. Like, did everything from the parts that suck to the parts that are fun. And of course, we're not there yet, but that's how that started.
Awesome.
But making it as a filmmaker is obviously not easy.
No, not at all. And it takes a lot of time and patience, and like collaboration is crucial.
Yeah, that's another thing that's extremely different about photography is usually, you might have an assistant or something, and if you do a certain type of work, you'll have a makeup artist and a hairstylist and all that. But in the end, you're doing most of it.
Yeah.
While as filmmaking, you have to let go and let other people do their job. Otherwise, they'll just get sick of you and not want to work with you, because everybody wants your liberty as well. And so a film that you make is not your film. The director's always credited, but really the director couldn't have done most of it on their own, right? It's everybody's work put together, while as photography, it relies so much on just the photographer, right? Like, it's their job to make sure it's good, while as filmmaking, you have to have a good team, and you have to have good chemistry, and you have to, I guess the hardest part is to let go. Yeah, to let go of some things.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a common issue that a lot of people had. I've had experiences and kind of met other people who were want to be producers and directors at the same time, so they can have more kind of creative control over everything. And at the end, it's ironically they hijack their entire project that they wanted to have a specific view for, which is completely opposite. I mean, it's obviously a huge trust thing. I think that's an issue a lot of creative people have. They have these epic ideas that they have in their mind, and they want to put it out there. But the hardest thing, definitely, like you said, is letting go. And once it's out there, it's not even yours anymore, right? Like, you're literally birthing it out into this dimension of reality, and then it's going to be, a gift to everyone else to appreciate or just rip it up, you know, and take it for whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of be brave about that. So
Yeah.
cool. Are there any type of books that you've gifted the most to other people?
No. I wish books were a bigger part of my life, but they kind of haven't been since high school.
Yeah. Is there any? Okay, well, it doesn't have to be books. Let's just say books or just even movies in general that kind of influenced you a lot.
One of my favorite movies is Into the Wild. Have you seen it?
Yep. Sean Penn directed.
Yeah, I actually recently just rewatched it because I wanted a friend to watch it. Of course, the main character goes a bit farther than I'm willing to go, but it's basically this whole breaking away from everything society tells you is important, mainly stuff and money, and caring more about experiences, which you can have through travel. And he was always very much about being alone, traveling alone. He'd meet people, but eventually he would leave them before he got too attached. Sure. But then at the end, spoiler alert, right before...
True story, so...
Yeah. Right before he dies, he wrote, happiness is only real when shared. And I guess, like, in his loneliness, he realized that how important your connections with people are as well. That's why I also like photographing people and going out and meeting new people. But just when I saw that film, whenever I see that film, I just really want to travel and just go somewhere without stuff and internet and all the things that we care about when we live in the city.
Sure.
So
kind of like being like a vagabond, which is kind of...
Yeah, but not quite. The hard part, I guess, is I like backpacking, and like I get to come home with better photos than most tourists do because that's what I do. But at the same time, everybody has such a lighter backpack than mine because I'm carrying a heavy ass camera and
20
like
batteries.
5 lenses and all this stuff, and it's like I wish I could just like walk around with nothing but like a few bills in my pocket for when I'm hungry, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean there is hopefully a common trend that's going to be happening with more newer generations is like the Zen minimalist thing. I saw this video recently about this one guy in Japan where he only has 150 belongings, whatever that is, just in total his entire house. And I think it's kind of really important to kind of get that sense of just having and maintaining all the things that you really essentially need. Especially when you're like in a place like Korea where it's really compact and minimal.
Yeah.
You don't even have the ample space. I always think about like if I went to back in Canada, I would have like this would only be one room in my entire house probably, that I could probably learn just to appreciate and just be much more minimal.
And there's all the stuff that you feel like you have to buy because you have empty space.
Yes, impulse buying and stuff like that. It kind of helps out.
Yeah. Also, Korea, like, you never feel like you've settled down. You feel like you want to be here for now, but you never know when you're going to leave. So that helps me not get too much stuff. Over the years, I've accumulated photography gear, and mainly that's it. I avoid buying stuff that doesn't have an important use. I have a little bit of furniture now, but like it's crap cheap furniture that I would have no problems just getting rid of.
Right. That's actually a good point too, because it could end up being that the things that you end up buying, it's not like a Fight Club quote or thing, but like the things that you end up buying is probably what ultimately makes you stay at that particular place for longer, right? Yeah. I think that's probably a reason why a lot of people end up staying in Korea longer as well.
Because of all the stuff.
Yeah, because of all the belongings they have, and of course later on meeting community, meeting friends and stuff, being comfortable in that environment, because the moment you buy, one particular object, whatever that is, that kind of details the amount of length that you're predetermining that you're going to stay there for.
Exactly. Yeah, that makes it really hard to leave Korea. Like, I know I want to leave eventually and experience living somewhere else. Well, when do I want to do that? It's just like, it's really comfortable here, and it's a great place to base yourself to travel as well.
Sure, yeah.
But it's scary to get attached to your stuff.
Absolutely. So, you kind of mentioned that, like, travel is a huge thing for you. So what other places would you like to travel that you haven't to yet?
Well, I mean, I only started traveling since I came to Korea. I had done very little travel before. Mainly we did local travel in Guatemala, as my family's a little bit big. I have 2 brothers and a sister.
Cool.
So it was too much for us to, like, fly somewhere far. So I've been mainly around Southeast Asia. I haven't even been to Japan yet, and it's, like, right there. So eventually I want to explore South America and eventually Europe. But Europe's expensive. Well, Western Europe, I guess.
I don't know about England anymore, but we'll see.
Yeah. That too.
They're going to have their own bills.
But, I mean, for now, it's just great to have Southeast Asia right there because it's so cheap and it's easy to fly to and easy to get around because so many people know English there.
Yeah.
Then I've been to a few countries in Central America and the States, but yeah, still a lot of places to go.
For sure. Do you have any tips that you can give to people who would like to travel that kind of make it easier for them? Whether it's like getting a flight or things to do or not to do when traveling, or
if it's easier, well, a lot of people make the excuse that they don't have the money. And I don't have a lot of money. You don't need a lot of money, of course, depending on what countries you go to, but there's a lot of places you can go where you don't need a lot of money. You could spend less than you would spend just on your normal life in Korea in parts of Southeast Asia if you spend responsibly. So just budget your money. You could do with $20 a day. It's like, it's all you need. It's not a lot of money. Just get a cheap flight, fly a cheap airline. It's not worth it to pay $200-300 more to be comfortable for 5 hours, right?
Right.
Deal with it. Deal with the pain. It's worth it. And once you've done it once, then you'll have no trouble doing it anymore. So for the people who don't have experience backpacking, it's a matter of getting out there, doing it first. Maybe find someone to travel with who will pressure you into doing more. The first time I did a big backpacking trip, I went with a roommate of mine, and he was more experienced than me, and he was much more willing to go out there to do things that I was afraid of, and that pressured me into doing it as well, because otherwise I might have spent more days going like, no, I'm just gonna like get a beer and a massage today. I mean, it's okay to do that, but I just did so much more and tried so many more things because of him. So that's also a good idea.
That's great. So yeah, people can actually help motivate and push you to get out of your own limits.
Positive peer pressure.
Yeah, positive peer pressure, absolutely. I mean, there's obviously so many different types of peer pressure that you can get to, but having a good amount of influences, even like you mentioned before, like if you go to a community where they're all creating content, like a film community or something, that's obviously the right step, because it's obviously propelling you to, find like-minded people and motivate yourself to try something, just to kind of either prove yourself or kind of have a base to kind of share what you've already been working on. I think one of the biggest issues is that a lot of people, they kind of work a lot of things, like that's something that I have a problem with, and finishing things as well. So many things go left undone and stuff. So.
Finishing things, especially filmmaking, because it's a monster at work, right? That it's really hard to finish films.
Yeah, and the more people, the harder, because they have schedules and stuff. You have to make up time. You have to get people to organize that stuff.
And when there's no money involved, and everybody needs to get something out of it. Yeah. So you need to let go even more of the control that you have, right?
Cool. And also, now that I'm looking through all your photos, what my favorite part about this photo is this guy right there.
Actually, I did not even notice that. I might have actually photoshopped him out if I would have noticed.
Really? But
Yeah.
I think it's just kind of interesting because it's just a really weird second element into the story, whatever the story is, that people kind of feed into it, you know?
Yeah. Well,
because, you know, in an artistic perspective, every time you have any type of photo, there can be 3 different points, for example, of interest, you know, obviously first, second, and maybe third, and they could be kind of narrating 3 different you know, mindsets or views, or even 3 different feelings of time, past, present, future, and stuff. So I'm just kind of curious, you know, at what point do you decide this is the photo that I want to take? Like, how you decide? Because, you know, obviously this is a huge landscape, so many things going on. Like, what kind of propels you to choose to finally decide?
It's I don't know, it's not even like feel like that. It's just, yeah, it's more just looking around, and after a while of doing it, you just see the pictures. And I mean, when you're there and you're in the mood, then the stories are already happening in your head. But they're not like a written narration. It's more of a feeling, and then what you do is what I do is I strive to capture that feeling with whatever I see. And after a while, it just becomes second nature. And again, there's a lot of things that don't work out.
Sure.
And there's also a lot of things like every once in a while I'll just like casually browse through old photos, and I'll find something that before I saw nothing in, or I felt like it didn't work out. Then I see it again in a new light, and I'm seeing something different now because I'm not seeing it the way I was seeing it before.
Right. And
I can find a new story in it. And there's times that there's an image that I really don't like, and for some reason I end up posting, and a lot of people end up liking it even though I didn't like it.
That's
and then I learned to like it because everyone else did.
Yeah.
Stuff like that happens. But yeah, it's mainly just feeling.
Yeah, I mean, this is such an amazing photo. Where was this at?
It's in Myanmar, but this is a completely different part of Myanmar than where we were working. I had like a few days to explore on my own before we started. So this is Bagan, an area that they have like over 1,000 temples just scattered everywhere that you can go into and check out.
Just like free reign, you can just go.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And like, are they still being used, those temples, or anything?
A few of them, the larger ones, yes. But what's great about there is there's so many temples that you could just go out there and find a random temple. There's no people, and sit on top of it and just chill out and look at the landscape.
Yeah, the landscape is so awesome. I mean, it's so wild. Just, you know, people, even for me, I just kind of lose track of just how wild, diverse the world can really be, you know?
Yeah.
And there's so many places that people don't really even know exist, you know? Yeah. That once they go there, they'll just find something completely so distinct and unique of that own place, which is, you know, obviously one of the best things about traveling. You know, like you find out so many great things about it. So, what has been your favorite place to travel to so far?
Myanmar.
Really?
Yeah.
It's all about Myanmar right now.
Yeah.
Cool.
Myanmar is really, really awesome. But everywhere has been great. There's something just different about Myanmar. That's kind of hard to... It's hard to grasp why it's different, but it is. It's not like the rest of Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
You know, being through Vietnam and Cambodia and Laos, they are different. They're definitely different, but there's a Southeast Asian feeling to them. Myanmar it just has its own feeling. And it sounds kind of cliche to say it, and people will be like, well, whatever, he was just there, he probably just still feels it, until you go there, and you're like, no, it is different. Unless you go to 5-star hotels and resorts and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely 2 different experiences you can have. You either go to the resort That's kind of like the wall around everything that's real there.
Yeah, and then it's the same thing everywhere.
I mean, that's one of my favorite things that happened to me when I went to Ecuador to visit my family there, because it's very gritty, right? But I just love how it's just much more so easygoing, and the things that again, it's all about cliches, right? Like everything that we take for granted happens, and the casualness of things that we take for granted. For example, like if your neighbors, they have a mango tree and you can just kind of shake it and just kind of grab and eat it or something, where here you would have to go to E-Mart and like buy it for like
$10.
Yeah, exactly. It's just the lifestyles that we have, and then you find like contentment and like satisfaction in things like that. Time, even the feeling of time is something that I always try to resonate with anytime I go somewhere, because you definitely feel it, how much it fluctuates and changes depending on where you are. I even find myself walking faster the moment I come back to Korea after traveling somewhere. Like when I was in South America for like a month, I was just like dragging my feet on the ground, just like from one place. I didn't care how long it would take. It's just hanging out, no internet, don't give a fuck, I don't care, no Facebook. Why?
Exactly.
For what reason? And then as soon as I get back here, people are just like walking at a different pace. People are talking a little bit faster.
People care about different things.
And that's what helps kind of grow in whatever part of the land that they're in. So
I think that's one of the great things about being able to grow up in a third world country was I feel like in Korea sometimes people just have trouble relaxing and taking it easy. Like it's work hard, play hard. Well, as I feel like I can just take it easy in a way that not a lot of people can sometimes.
And people kind of lose sight that Korea was a third world country at one point. Like they were completely devastated. Like I love seeing those photos of Korea in the past.
It's fascinating.
You're like, wow, this was Dongdaemun?
And it's not that
looks
long
like
ago.
Myanmar. Like,
it's not that long ago.
Which is kind of crazy, and who knows, like how much of a good thing that is, in terms of like globalization, where we're trying to get everyone in the world to kind of evolve, grow together, hopefully idealistically. But in the end, how much do we lose, of individual cultures? Because to grow, we have to have an idealistic view of the world, which is so far the Western culture of how they perceive things. This doesn't necessarily mean democracy, but just like music, taste, and stuff. And in the end, they lose a lot. There was a really awesome Netflix documentary about food.
What's it called?
I think it's just called Food. I'll have to check it out. I'll let you know about it. But even talks about different things like just water, fire, and talks about all the different elements. And they go to one particular place, and obviously one of them was I think it was in Australia, and the Aboriginals there, and for them, they would literally live in a place like this, just with fire. They would roast and just eat the meat that they kind of grow like that. But then their kind of traditions, and just like these people, their cultures were dying, and then the new generations were trying to be a little bit more domesticated or kind of more westernized, that they were actually getting much more sick because of the food that they were eating, which is so different that they were conditioned to, from generations, that the only way to feel better was to actually revert back to, the traditional foods that they ate before. That made it, influence to them and stuff.
And on that, after I came to Korea, the quality of food is obviously not as good as I've had in Guatemala. And I get sick a lot more often than I ever did. I was very rarely sick in Guatemala. Maybe like once a year I'd get a bit of a cold. It wasn't even that bad. It wasn't enough to like have me stay home. I get sick a few times a year where I'm just kind of like, I'm gonna stay in bed today. And vegetables, they just don't have the same amount of flavor that they do in poorer countries, I guess.
Yeah, because it's organic, right? It's like, especially with the vegetables. I guess.
Yeah, I don't even know how organic
you
things
got
are at this
stomach
point.
sickness, like you have to be super careful as well in terms of like sanitization.
Yeah.
So it's like a give and take and for that kind of stuff. This is a really... What's the story behind this photo here?
This was a...
Child fishing on the island.
Yes.
She's fishing?
Well, at this point, no, but her and her little brother were walking around with a bucket and grabbing fish and stuff.
Oh, okay.
There's this area in the southern part of Laos called Dondet, or 4,000 Islands, although there's not nearly that many islands. It was one of the most chill places I've ever been. Just literally just laid in a hammock all day.
Is that a monkey between two ducks?
No, that's one of the birds. I think its head is down.
Oh, I thought that was the head of a monkey.
No,
that's so funny. Birds. I was like, what? This guy is like, this is like a riddle that I see. Like you have a monkey, you have a fox, and a chicken trying to get through the river.
It's just its head is down.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Those are the bird fishers in China on the Li River.
Really?
The ones that they tie the neck of the bird, and the bird goes and they grabs the fish, and then they take the fish out.
What?
Yeah.
That is fucking awesome.
Although it's hardly done anymore, a lot of the people who still do it only do it as performance for tourists at this point. Very few people are still doing it.
Wow.
And I don't know, some people might yell animal cruelty, but the people and the birds actually have a relationship.
Sure.
Like
you can't just do that to any bird. Like,
yeah.
Have you tried putting a leash on a cat? Do you know what I mean? Like, you can't just do it. You're gonna get scratches on your faces and shit. That is crazy. That's really, really fascinating. Yeah. Again, it's I kind of see that kind of theme of just about tradition in general. Something like that where it's part of their way of survival, and that becomes tradition. That later on, because of tourists coming by, it just becomes a spectacle. That it's not necessarily useful because maybe the tourists are giving them a much more different form of passive income.
Yeah. That
it just kind of changes and just warps it out.
Yeah.
I'm really curious, 100 years from now, our own traditions, how much is going to be changed. Things that what we see of them is what the people, in the future are going to see of us. That kind of a thing.
And the world changes at a ridiculous rate at this point.
That's funny. Wow, that looks amazing. God damn. Was this in the same place?
This is Cambodia.
Cambodia?
Yeah.
Wow.
A little bit of creative liberty taken with Photoshop there, to be honest.
Are they stacked on like copy and paste?
No. Just a little bit of extra drama added there, and
well, as long as
there's a few people in the corner that I removed.
Okay.
So that it looked more isolated.
Sure. Isolation is awesome.
Yeah.
Again, I just love the stories in these photos. I mean, that's kind of an important thing. Sure, even if you had to Photoshop a few people out, but just to do that, it kind of helps accentuate this particular story that you're trying to encapsulate over here.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, dog and the guy just walking over there in front of this like ancient, ruined, dilapidated temple.
Yeah. And
in Cambodia.
On that topic, have you heard of the photographer Steve Mccurry?
No.
Do you know the photo, the really famous National Geographic photo of the Afghan girl?
Yeah.
Okay, so he's that photographer.
Sure.
Recently, there was this huge controversy about Photoshop in his photos. And mainly because he was considered like a documentary photographer, and therefore people think you shouldn't alter it at all. And then later he's like, I'm not a photojournalist, I'm creating art. But then a lot of people get really angry when people use Photoshop, but the story that you try to tell, like when you see something with your eyes are not objective at all.
No.
People assume that they are, and therefore the camera should also be. But when I was there, I wasn't looking at those people in the corner. That's not what I was focusing on. They're there, and I can't ask them to leave so I can get the photo that I want, right? It's Photoshop is just another tool to finish bringing your vision. So if you have to remove something, or like remove a little trash, sometimes like there was a candy wrapper there, and that one candy wrapper in your photo will make it look like the place was dirty, but maybe it's just one candy wrapper. So you remove it, and then you get the actual like image that you were looking for.
Right.
Stuff like that. Also, like being out there, you're not experiencing reality. You have the environment, you have the smells and all that. So all that adds to a dramatic feeling that you're not going to have in a photo. So you need to compensate for that.
Yeah, and I love how every single photo has a different type of color and feel to it. That kind of helps accentuate it and stuff. I mean, obviously this picture could have easily been colored, but for some reason, you know, the feeling can be even stronger just in monochrome or black and white.
My way about going, whether to decide to go color or black and white, a lot of people might just like switch between the two and choose which one looks better, but I will leave the color in only if the color can add to the story and actually look good. So photographing soul in color is really difficult because there's all the shops and stuff have way too much bright color that doesn't say anything other than like, look, this is my store. So if you turn it to black and white, then that's no longer distracting. You care more about light and shapes, right?
It's a great photo too.
Yeah, in this case, like the color of the sky is part of the feeling. In black and white wouldn't make sense. That other one that you said with the boys jumping, it was a really gray day. It was just like mute colors, and in color it just kind of looked flat and boring. Black and white would bring out more of the story.
Does traveling in this type of sense ever help gather ideas for future projects, whether it's in film or anything else that's more fiction?
Not for me. I just tend to think about what is out there and the photos that I'm taking. And the only thing I can think of is I want to get home and look at these on a bigger screen and edit them.
Just edit them as much as you can. What is the process usually like when you're editing? Does it take a long time for each photo?
Depends on the photo. Some photos just don't need much at all. Some photos need a lot of work. Depends on the vision that you have for it.
And I kind of saw this type of thing going on with some of the other photos of these kids and people. So what's this about? It's just like first impression is sunscreen. That's what I'm thinking.
It's called the Tanaka, I think it was, in Myanmar. It is a form of like natural sunscreen that they have, where they grind this like type of like a type of tree branch, I guess, and then they make that with it. However, people also like to make patterns and stuff like that, so it's also a bit of a fashion statement. But it's still very common for people to do out there, even in the cities and stuff, not just out in the villages.
So another question I have is kind of finish up in a bit, but when you think of the word successful, who comes into your mind?
That's an interesting question. Some of my friends who are working in photography, I consider them successful, even though they don't necessarily seem to consider themselves successful.
Sure, yeah.
Like, the guy I went to Myanmar with, I think he's really successful. He wouldn't say that about himself, probably, but that's just simply the attitude of having still farther to go and not wanting to stagnate. But I don't define success by money, just by actually enjoying and being good at what you do. Yeah, that's it. And having enough money to live off of.
Right. Just kind of being able to do what you want to do freely.
Yeah.
Which is kind of one of the hardest things that people are trying to achieve constantly, right? By like finding a 9-to-5 stable job and kind of working towards that freedom, where in terms of freedom you also kind of have to suffer once in a while. Right? It's like something that you're striving for.
With security, comes a lot that you have to sacrifice, and then you get comfortable, and then you're afraid to leave that security for anything that you want to do.
Which is kind of interesting because a photo like this, you know, symbolically can feel like freedom, but just like any, even like a painting, you know, the final product is the process, is the result of the process that had to go through it, which dealt with, you know, pain and time and, you know, angst and all that stuff to get to this part. So they just see it as the end object, as the end result. Like, wow, it's amazing, but they kind of lose into it. So hopefully people get into that kind of perspective. That's a great shot. Like, how high were you?
I don't remember anymore.
Just edibles. I'm just eating those. That's pretty cool, though. I mean, these are so magical, honestly. I can't really think of another word to describe it, but these are really fucking magical pictures, too.
Thanks.
Really love it. Cool. I mean, so if you guys want to see more of Wesley's photos, like, I mean, he has so many over here. He has so many different types. He has from people to soul, specifically more travel, his events. You can check out his about page and even his blog. Also,
not much on the blog yet.
But it will be there. I mean, just check out his stuff over here and you can see what he's got. And if you haven't been following him on Instagram, I definitely recommend you do it because he has added even some extra photos that might not necessarily be on his website that you can check over here. And it's such a great variety. Did you get to go on the air balloon?
No, it's like over $300.
Oh, Jesus.
It's not worth it.
Is it?
It's like a 10-minute ride.
You could probably get some amazing photos from there, right?
Yeah, well, I was like, maybe I'll treat myself as a graduation gift, and then I saw how much it was. It was like,
no,
I can do so much more with that money.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
You can buy a temple there, maybe.
Yeah, travel for another 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, priorities. That looks like Kate Winslet. Okay. Yeah, so is there anything else that you want to tell people or let them know? Anything about what you're doing? Or
whatever you're doing, do more of it.
Yes.
That's it.
Depends what it is, but yes, definitely do more of it. Sometimes more is good. So that's about it for today's episode. I think that was really fun. I really enjoyed checking out these photos. I think it's really inspiring to kind of see all these traveling things and just such a great eye just for capturing scenarios and just kind of finding these really great, awesome kind of moments of people wherever you go. So hopefully people out there get really motivated and inspired as well to kind of travel out and see more. Get out of your bubble, really, right? And just kind of see the world for what it is, because you'd be surprised what you'd find. And you in the end, you would always find more and learn more about yourself. And kind of living less is a lot more that way as well. So cool. So Wesley, thanks so much for coming out. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
That was really fun. Yeah, let's do it again soon.
All right.
So guys, again, please check out Wesley Chang on Wesley Chang Photo on Instagram, or go to his website over here. Go to weschangphoto.com to see all his stuff, and I'm sure he can take photos of you if that's something that you might need in the future. You never know. So have a great day wherever you are. Have a good morning, afternoon, evening, and we'll see y'all later. Okay? Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Peace.